Listen, I'm really excited how many of you have been watching this last video that Al-Fadi and I did on the inscriptions and just how important those inscriptions are, because they show that these inscriptions from the 7th century just are not in the right place, not for the 7th century. And it looks like the inscriptions that we're looking for don't really begin to appear until the end of the 7th century, but mostly in the 8th and 9th century, these rock inscriptions. But since there's been such an excitement and you've gone over 20,000 people have been watching this video in just a few days, I want to point out one inscription because a number of you have brought this up. And this is the inscription that is at the Huma al-Numur site, which is northwest of Taif. If you all remember, Taif is that town that's up on the Western Plateau. Here is a picture of it. Here's a map of it. It's just maybe about 50 miles. Some say maybe 40 to 50 miles away from Mecca. It is along the Western Plateau where Dr. Patricia Kroon realized the trade did go. And this inscription was inscribed, was created on this rock. And you can see this picture here. And it's fascinating what it says. But before I get into what it says, many of you have been pointing and saying you need to go to the Islamic Awareness website, because here it's very clear on the Islamic Awareness website that this inscription gives us the date that the Masjid al Haram was rebuilt. And if you go up, here's a picture, just pointed out, this is what it looks like. You're at the top of their website. They have the picture of the inscription. Then they have the writing in the archaic Arabic that would have existed in the late 7th century. You can see there are no diacritical marks, no vowelization there. And then they've written below that in modern standard Arabic. Now, this is what's fascinating. It's obvious that the Islamic Awareness website has a problem here. And you can see this is an apologetic, because the inscription itself does not say what they're saying it says. And the great thing is they have made a mistake. They have actually put it on the very site. Just look at the Arabic that you see there. There are 9 lines. Particularly look at lines 7, 8, and 9. Here, I'll just put a box around them. But let's look at the English translation for that, because what the website says is very fascinating. The website says that this is the first independent documentary verification that of the reconstruction and remodeling of the Masjid al Haram in Mecca. Okay, that's how they have pointed to this inscription of the reconstruction and remodeling of the Masjid al Haram. Masjid al Haram, as you well know, is where the Kaaba is. Here's a picture of the Kaaba and the picture of the Masjid al Haram. According to the Quran itself, it is where Muhammad went to in the night journey in 621. That's referred to, they say, Muslims say, in chapter 17, verse 1. We have debunked that quite categorically, but that's not what we're looking in today. The Masjid al Haram is also where the Qibla was canonized in 624. That you find in chapter 2, verse 144 to 150, where it was redirected from the farthest mosque, which is it was redirected from what Muslims claim today was Jerusalem, back down to the Masjid al Haram. And that would be the first reference to the Masjid al Haram. Fascinating, because if this is the case, then you've got to ask the question, when was this first created? Well, many Muslims would say it is where Abraham went and built the Kaaba, or some would say rebuilt the Kaaba in, well, that's 1900 BC, so that's quite early. And it's also where Muhammad lived and spent his first 60 years, from 570 up till 622, when he then moved up to Medina, right there in Mecca, very close to the Masjid al Haram. But here's what's interesting. Here's what's interesting. If this is the case, it's a pretty old building. It's a pretty old place. It's been around since 1900 BC. Some would even suggest that maybe it was there when Adam and Eve came down from the very beginning of humanity. But nonetheless, it's very, very old, right? Until you get to this inscription. And when you look at this inscription, suddenly everything comes out of whack. Because let's read what it really does say. The Islamic Awareness website said it was it was reconstructed and remodeled. In what year? Well, it says right at the very bottom there. Look at the year. In the 78th year. That's in line number 9. The 78th year is, if you start with 622 as the Hijra, the 78th year would make it between 697 and 698. So it's at the time of Abd al-Malik. He is the emperor at this time. It is during this time that it has been rebuilt or built. What does it actually say on the inscription? According to the Islamic Awareness website, it's rebuilt. And that Abd al-Malik was the one to start that rebuilding process around 695, and then it was finished in 697, 698 is what they're saying. But that's not what the inscription says. And what's fascinating, when you look at the Arabic, it's very clear that the word is built, not rebuilt. It was built in 697 to 698. How do we know? Well, look at this word here. I'm just going to put it in red there. Look at that. I'm circling it in red. Notice it's this word here, and this is the word that we're going to look at. I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm going to let you hear it from somebody who knows it much better than me. Are you ready?
Muniya.
Buniya. Okay, did you hear that?
Muniya.
Muniya. Okay, Buniya. So there is right there, and there's a Buniya. Obviously, there is no vowelization in this. They say that this word should be rebuilt. So let's see what rebuilt sounds like in Arabic. And here's what it sounds like in Arabic.
Wahida bina'uha. Wahida bina'uha.
Wahida bina'uha. That is not what's written in the text there. Notice? So this is not rebuilt. This is built. This is this word here.
Muniya.
Are you seeing the difference? And there it is, black and white. And they even have it when you come down through the Arabic and when you look at the translation. If you look at the translation, they say was built, not was rebuilt, but was built. Obviously, they're in a quandary here, and you can see why they're caught. Because they would like this to be rebuilt, not built. Because if it's built in 697, that fits our dating. That's exactly when it would have been built. That would be about the time when Mecca would have been chosen. Remember, you have Zubair, who is revolting against Abd al-Malik, who has been in power since 680, 685. He's up in Damascus. Zubair is in Petra. Remember, Dan Gibson has gone through all this we've done this many times with looking at what Dan Gibson is saying. Zubair rebels and revolts against Abd al-Malik, and so therefore he destroys the Kaaba, destroys much of Petra, grabs the black stone and sends it to the south while he remains there, and Al-Hajjaj comes and then fights against him and kills him there in around 691, 692, so we're talking about the late 7th century. But now the black stone is in the south. The pilgrims are following where the black stone goes because that's where God's presence is. So they're following the black stone. Obviously, they've got to put a structure to put the black stone onto or into, in this case, onto. And so they build the Masjid al Haram, according to this inscription, 78 years after the Hijra or AH, which would make it 697 to 698. That's exactly when you would expect it. So roughly, we're talking about 5 to 6 to 7 years after the black stone have been moved down there. Inscriptions are great. See, they don't lie. Inscriptions are great because they don't disintegrate. They don't deteriorate. They're easy for us to read, and you can read it for yourself. I've just read what's in black and white. Islamic Awareness is over a barrel on this one. They've tried to say that this is rebuilding when it's not rebuilding at all. This is built. It was built in 697, 698, because Mecca was now the place where the pilgrims were going. It becomes very important, obviously, because in time, it's going to be the major sanctuary. And you can see there is a tussle going on as we know it. There's a tussle going on because then Al-Hajjaj, who destroys Zubair under the orders of Abd al-Malik, 710, then he builds the Wasit Mosque. 710. That's another little over 11 to 12 years later. He builds the Wasit Mosque, which is, Wasit means between. It's the between. Between what? Between Petra and Mecca, the Masjid al Haram. Great stuff. That's why I love inscriptions, because we just have to read what's on there. We've always asked this, we've always mentioned this. If you're going to make a point, if you're going to make a decision, if you're going to claim something, for heaven's sakes, just read the Arabic, read the rocks. And if we aren't going to say it, the rocks are going to cry out for us. God bless you. This is Jay, over and out.